my channel, Christ Centered Mental Health. This is my new series I started called His Strength and Weakness, where I interview a professing Christian about their struggle with mental illness and maintaining faith in the Lord. I have my guest here. Her name is Tamika. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and specifically about your mental illness and your experience with medication?
Yes, my name is Tamika. I'm retired military. I did 18 years in the Army. I'm diagnosed with bipolar type 2 and PTSD, and I've also been on medicine for the last 11 years.
Yeah, for those people who aren't familiar with psychology, can you please explain to them what bipolar and PTSD is?
Well, bipolar, you have type 1 and type 2. The difference between the two are with type 2, it's not hallucinations, but it's more you have a lot of manic phases and depression more so than psychotic episodes, as in people with bipolar type 1. With PTSD, it's not just a army thing, it's also anybody that's been through a traumatic illness or situation. Mine obviously came from the military, and it's hard having PTSD and bipolar type 2 because you never know which one is acting up, if it's the PTSD or if it's the bipolar disorder.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about your military experience? Like, I didn't know you were in the military.
Yes, I went in when I was 17. I was actually a junior in high school. So I left for basic training. I came back my senior year of high school. Then I left again after I graduated. Um, I've done a couple of tours. Virginia was always stateside, never been out of the country or anything like that with the job that I had. I have three different jobs with the military: procurement, human resource, and resilient sergeant. Um, my PTSD came from working with a lot of soldiers and stuff like that from Walter Reed that also experienced PTSD from war related incidents and everything.
Oh. Well, thank you for your service. Like, how long were you in the military for?
18 years, and I did an early
Oh, yeah, you said,
medical retirement.
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Um, when were you diagnosed and how did you react?
I was diagnosed. Well, first of all, I was misdiagnosed, and anything dealing with mental illness, I always tell people it's good to be consistent with the treatment and the therapist or psychiatrist you're going to because it's too easy to get misdiagnosed because a lot of the illness piggybacks off each other. Um, so when I had my oldest daughter, who's 12, I was diagnosed with postpartum depression. Um, After that, maybe about a year later, they diagnosed me with major depressive disorder. And finally, I got the right diagnosis 3 years later with seeing the same psychiatrist who was with me through each stage of my life and my career with bipolar type 2 and then with the PTSD.
Oh, wow. By the way, we have a commenter that says thank you for your service.
Ah, thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah. Um, how did your friends and family react when you were diagnosed?
Um, I've always had issues, behavior issues. They saw it as ADHD growing up, and anybody that know a little bit about mental health, that ADHD, most people that have it, it's an underlying illness there, and normally you can see it as you get older. And 9 times out of 10, somebody with ADHD will be diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So they kind of figured that something was going on. So they knew, and they were very open and supportive about it. Even the
That's
medication route,
interesting.
because a lot of people frown on medicine.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. That's
Hmm.
interesting. I never thought of like people with ADHD being misdiagnosed for bipolar disorder. Mm,
Yes.
I never thought of that before.
Yes, I
Um,
think the research shows 80% of people that's diagnosed with ADHD, they go on to have bipolar disorder.
wow, that's
Hmm.
interesting. Like, it kind of makes sense though because there's kind of like an overlap. Like if you're bipolar and you have mania, and then with ADHD, kind of I can kind of see that. Like,
It
mhm.
is, and that's why they don't like to diagnose ADHD in certain kids until they get a certain age. And if you got a child that's taking medicine, it can be hard because if you have ADHD, but you also have an underlying illness like bipolar or something, if you only treating the ADHD part, it will make your episodes worse.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I get
So
that.
that's why they prefer for you to try to get to the bottom of what type of ADHD is it, combined hyperactivity, easily distracted. Because, like I said, if you don't treat the right illness first, it'll cause you to have the manic episodes. The medicine will cause you to go off track, and then make your episodes more
Yeah.
intense.
And would you say that would be that's why it's important for the patient to be 100% honest with their psychiatrist?
Yes, and I always tell people when you're shopping for a psychiatrist or a therapist, it's like dating. You have to find the right person because you want to be 100% transparent and you want to be honest with your therapist about what's going on. Because if you're not, like I say, you can easily get misdiagnosed. And then that will throw off your treatment.
Makes sense. Well, someone commented said early years. I'm not sure what she means by that, but she said early years.
Okay, she can
Yeah.
just elaborate on that. I can answer it for her.
What? Anyways, she said, what about before that?
As far as,
Oh, she said, the comment before her comment was, thank you for your service. And then she said early years.
does she
I'm not,
mean how was my, okay, my behavior before? Because
uh,
technically I did get
uh,
suspended from school and stuff a lot. And the thing is, in the black community, we're gonna go ahead and call it
yeah.
like it is. A lot of kids are misdiagnosed and mislabeled, and they labeled me as a problematic child because, like I said, I fought a lot. I got in trouble, easily distracted in school, class clown, and those were clearly
Oh,
signs of having a behavior disorder.
yeah. That makes sense.
Mhm.
Or, what was it? Oh, when did you become a Christian?
I've always been a Christian, believe it or not. Most of my
Oh,
families, my mother, she's an evangelist. A lot of my aunts and uncles, they're ministers. I grew up in the church, so I've always been a Christian. And I think that's what's helped me with my mental illness is having that faith where I had something to fall back on when I was depressed. I had that upbringing of knowing that it wasn't going to last that long, where somebody that doesn't have faith, they don't have that to fall back on and be like, you know what? I know it's a bigger picture out here. I know I'm dealing with this for some type of reason. So I think that really has helped me. But on the other hand, a lot of Christians don't believe in medication because
that's
I had a lot of
true. They
people
don't.
tell me that you should pray about it. It's just the devil trying to get at you. We have to have that open conversation that your faith and medication does go hand in hand sometimes.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I get that. We kind of answered this question, but I'll ask it again for clarification.
Mhm.
How has your faith helped you in dealing with your mental illness?
Just having, like, when I'm going through my depressive stages, and you have to do a lot of self-talk and self-reflecting because it's easy to say, oh, I got over it because I knew it wasn't going to last. When you're going through that particular episode, you're not thinking about that. You constantly have to do self talk. I constantly have to do that. I have to read my word. So I have to not only lean on what I learned in therapy, but I also have to learn that life is bigger than me and that if I'm dealing with something, it's not going to last long. And I know God made us in his image, and I have to remember those key things that I can get through anything by having faith and believing in his word.
Yeah, amen to that. Like I agree with that. Um, does taking medication display a lack of trust in God? Why or why not?
No, and I have this conversation a lot. God gave these people the knowledge, the talent, and the ability to get this medicine to help us. And do I think people that have situational depression or whatever need medication? No, of course not. But when you have a chemical imbalance, it's something completely different. And like I said, I think God put that medicine there and put that knowledge for these doctors to be able to get that medicine for us to take to be able to function.
I like that answer. Like I have that conversation with people a lot too. Like a lot of people think that if you struggle with mental illness, you should just pray about it instead of taking medication. Like,
And that's a very poor way of thinking about it. And I don't think they
yeah,
realize even in the Bible, and I get it, some of that stuff can be dramatic, but it just depends on how you look at it. But even in the Bible, a lot of the people, like the guy with the swine, and God took the spirits and stuff and put it in the swine, he suffered with mental illness. So it does date way back to then. He didn't take any medicine for it, but I do believe that
you
God,
struggle with
not in the physical, like I said, put these people here to give us that medicine to be able to focus and be in touch with reality to
exactly.
move on.
Yeah, I agree with that. What is something you wish other Christians understood about mental illness?
That is more than just having a lack of faith, because that's something we hear a lot about, that, oh well, if you had more faith you wouldn't go through this, you got to believe more. Yes, you got to believe more, but just like he said, faith without work is dead. And you have to put in the work of understanding your illness, understanding your triggers. And even people that don't have a mental health diagnosis, you have to understand these things. And it doesn't show that you're weak and that you don't have faith. It shows that you have faith in him, and he will lead you to the people or the medication to help you get better. And that's something that we need to start embracing with people and within the church, is taking medication.
Exactly, I agree with that. We need to like treat mental illness just like we would treat any kind of other illness that requires meds. Like
Exactly. And like I tell them, you take meds for other things besides that. If you got a hurt foot, you're going to go to that same doctor who prescribed medication and get your foot taken care
yeah,
of. So does that show that you have a lack of faith that God is not going to heal your leg? So sometimes you have to put it in perspective with certain Christians. Not all of them believe that, but certain ones, that, hey, it's the
yeah,
same scenario.
exactly. Um, how can the body of Christ become more involved in helping those who struggle with mental illness?
If I can understand that question correctly, you mean as far as the people that believe?
Yeah,
Just being more open, more educated. The church do need to step up a little bit and educate people on mental illness. Um, I think a lot of people do turn to the church sometimes and they get turned away, like you said, with the comments that are made. Um, it's just a
yeah,
lack of education and having compassion. That's another thing. Just having compassion. If you don't understand, just be compassionate with people and give them their options.
yeah, I agree with that. Like,
Mhm.
how can Christians avoid hurting those who suffer from mental illness?
By being mindful of the things they say, because like the Bible says, the tongue has the power of life and death. So you already talking to somebody that is sustainable to certain things. And with mental health, you have to be careful that you don't trigger these people even more so. So it goes back to what I was saying earlier, just education, um, making sure that you come to these people out of love and understanding. That's the biggest thing. If you don't understand still, just give your ear, your shoulder, and just be there, not only as a Christian, but as a human being.
What is the cause of mental illness and what's the purpose behind it?
Oh, that's something a professional might have to say, but my personal opinion, it just depends because you got situational mental illness. Some mental illness come from a TBI, traumatic brain injuries, other mental illness you're born with, and it has something to do with the chemical imbalance in your body. So it's a whole bunch of different reasons where mental illness comes from, and that's why I say depending on the situation with it, therapy can help. So not all mental illness and mental disorders require medication. I'm for medication, but not all of them. And I think it's
Right.
on a case by case for them to work with their doctor and their psychiatrist on the best treatment. Because sometimes
Yeah.
cognitive behavior therapy works just as well as medication and a healthy
So,
lifestyle change.
do you believe there's a purpose behind mental illness?
Mm, it depends. I would say it depends on the person and how they handle
Yeah.
it. So that's a hard one to answer.
Yeah.
For
No, I
me, for
understand.
instance, just having it and all the things that I've gone through and I overcame, and I think I overcame because of my faith. I try my best to even having the group that we have. I try to focus on mental illness because even the people that haven't been diagnosed with a mental disorder, they still have challenges in everyday life. So I think with mine, I used it for good by educating people on mental health and mental illness.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
What's your thoughts about Christian counseling versus secular counseling?
It depends. Some counselors, that's why I say it depends on the individual, and that will dictate how your treatment comes. Because, like I said, finding a therapist or a counselor is just like dating. You have to find the right one because not all therapists or psychiatrists are in line with being a Christian or the Bible, and that's a big part. You don't want to talk to somebody that don't have kind of like the same core values as you do. My therapist, she does believe in God. We do talk about it every now and then. She doesn't frown upon it when we're doing our treatment and everything like that. So I would recommend it, but it is all up to the individual person.
I like how you said. I like how you equated to what you said. You equated finding the right psychiatrist to dating because it is a lot like that. You're trying to find someone who you're compatible with, who
Mhm.
you can like talk to about anything, and like work through certain issues. So it's kind of like dating.
Yeah, and if you get the wrong therapist or psychiatrist, it can have the same effect as somebody you're dating. It can become a toxic
Yeah,
relationship, and you can have even worse mental health issues if you don't find the right
exactly.
person. Because all therapists and psychiatrists are not created equal, and all of them are not good, and they all specialize in different things as well.
Exactly. And I like to tell people when it comes to dealing with psychiatrists or psychologists, I like to tell people just be 100% honest with them about what you're feeling because they can only help you if you're honest with them. Like,
Yes, and if you're not telling them the truth, rather you're embarrassed by it. I know one person, she has a habit of sleeping with a lot of people, and that's something she didn't want her therapist to know. And that's very important because with the diagnosis that she finally got that was correct, that's one of the key components of that particular disorder. So, like I said, you have to find somebody
uh,
you're comfortable with because part of the BPD disorder that she had, it lined up with the risky behavior and everything and
yeah.
being promiscuous. So that's something that you have to feel comfortable with talking to somebody.
So is she now getting the help that she needs?
Yes.
That's good. That's awesome. Like, the last question I have is how has your illness affected your parenting?
It affects it a lot. To be honest with you, people are like, oh my God, you got 3 kids. How do you function? Believe it or not, it helps me get over it because I know no matter what, just like if I'm sick with a cold or the flu, I have to function because I have these kids that's counting on me. I wish I can lay in bed and just lay there for days and days on end and not get up. But I know I have to push through. But I also let them know, hey, mommy need a timeout. So I'm open and honest with them about my mental health.
Yeah,
And I want them to know because it might be signs that they have. And I want them, it's also taught me to be open with my kids to know about their triggers and how they feel
yeah,
so they won't have that stigma that, oh, I can't have a moment, I can't break down. But sometimes I do parent out of guilt when I have my episodes and everything and I'm moody. When I
yeah,
get better, I do overcompensate for it by buying them things and everything. So I've gotten better at not doing that. But it's so I think it's almost balanced out. It does affect it a lot. With me being open and honest with them, but it also affects me sometimes with getting out and doing things with them too, because I'm going through slow motion sometimes when I'm in my depressive stage.
yeah,
So it affects it a lot. But I think
yeah. I can imagine.
overall, it affects it in a positive way.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine that. I bet you there's a lot of ups and downs with it. Mm.
And it is. And then as a parent, who has a mental disorder, it helps you to key in on your own kids and catch things at an earlier age. Because I was able to catch
Yeah,
something with my daughter because she was going through some of the same things that I was going through at a younger age. And I was able to be like, hey, I think I need to go ahead and put her in therapy and get the right diagnosis. And I did. And she's 12 now. She just turned 12. She know how to convey her feelings and stuff more so than a person that's probably in their 20s and 30s who don't
oh,
know
wow.
what's going on with them. So I would say it's a good
Yeah,
thing. So yes, and I'm glad I'm catching it earlier. So as she get older and become an
she'll be
adult,
able to
she's
catch it
able
herself.
to, yes, and know her
Yeah.
triggers and know how to function.
So yeah, that makes sense. I get that. Like, so it's in a way, since she has you, when she gets older, she'll be able to recognize the signs within herself before someone else would recognize the signs in themselves.
Yes, and
Yeah,
now with
yeah,
therapy, she's learning how to correct that behavior because as a child, she's learning anyway if she didn't have a disorder.
yeah,
Because right now she's diagnosed with a impulsive control disorder, which she had been diagnosed with ADHD too, and they just put a label on it now that she's a little bit older and can express herself more. But she's taking therapy, she's learning how to deal with situations and stuff that comes her way, like I said, that somebody else her age or even older adults don't know how to express themselves or to deal with the situation. And we always talk about being mindful and everything. Now with her, I don't do medication. I want her to learn, and as she get older she feel like she needs it, then that's fine because her body is still developing and growing.
yeah. That makes sense. And it's probably a better idea that you do it like that because, like, you don't know how, since she's still a kid, you don't know how medication would affect her.
Exactly.
Like,
So it's mostly just changing her eating habits, and just making sure she get the natural vitamins, vitamin D, because vitamin D does play a big part in depression and everything like that. And those are things that
I was
and
just
that bring it
talking to
back to,
someone.
go
I
ahead.
was just talking to someone the other day about doing like vitamin B12, taking vitamin B12. No,
And I know a lot of people take that for weight loss, but it also does help with your move. And I think
yeah,
they're trying to get that where the insurance will cover it because a lot of that stuff is what we're missing in our diets, and that does
yeah,
affect your mood. It affects like a lack of vitamin D, vitamin E, even with the B12. It affects you. It make you drain less energy. It makes you depressed. So I think that the insurance really need to pay for some kind of class or something so people can educate themselves
yeah,
on all of
exactly.
that. So it's not just
Yeah,
taking medicine, it's also getting the same dopamines and all that stuff that you can get naturally.
yeah, that makes sense.
Hmm.
All right, so that was the last question I have. I do have a question for you after we go off the air. But I
Okay.
wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank you for coming on here and talking to me about this. Like I know it takes a lot of courage, so I thank you for doing this. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who watched this and who's gonna watch this. If you stuck all the way through, like please rate and subscribe to me and let me know what you guys think about this conversation. I hope it was edifying to you all. I hope it was edifying to you too to have this conversation. And I hope that this is glorifying to God. Um, I want to put it out there that if someone else wants to be interviewed by me, I only have two requirements. One, that you were diagnosed with a mental illness, and two, that you are a professing believer. So if you meet those two requirements, please contact me and we can work something out. Um, all right, that's all I have to say. If you would you want if someone wanted to contact you, would you be okay with that?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Tell them to reach out to me. And because I'm always talking to people on the outside about different avenues, helping them find the right therapist and everything. So feel free to send them my way.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're
All right.
welcome.
Have a good day. God bless everyone. And I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.